Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ion Canon podcast, your home for in-depth discussion on the lore, the narrative, and the big ideas of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew, and I'm coming to you from Underworld North Studio in Toronto. And as always, I am joined from across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how you doing this week?
I am doing good. You can tell that I think daylight savings time is either ending or starting because it's 5 o'clock and it's a
Mm,
little lighter.
yeah,
And then in a couple of weeks, hopefully, it'll be sunny even when it's 6 o'clock at night,
yeah.
which is always nice for me.
I keep forgetting March 8th, Sunday, March 8th is when it, uh, I forget which is which, but we spring forward, which means we lose an hour of sleep, but that's okay. Is what it is. Tonight, I mean, I don't like the time change, but it'll be the
Yeah.
better. Well, we're going to the better part of the time thing, unless you're in Saskatchewan or Arizona, and then you're not doing anything, except for relative to everyone else. Anyways, if there is a bright center of the galaxy, then countless star systems will try to slip through its fingers. For almost all of the Star Wars that we currently have, the main political entity is a single sort of, we'll get to that in a second, sort of a single galaxy spanning body centered on Coruscant, at least the main one. Of course, it's more accurate to say that the Republic, the New Republic, and above all, the Empire merely aspire to extend their reach across the galaxy with mixed results. Both iterations of the Republic simply can't establish enough of a unifying presence in the Outer Rim, or they just haven't even shown up yet at this point, their point in the timeline. And the tyrannical empire faces a number of worlds, including core worlds, RIP Alderaan, that harbor an open guerrilla revolution aimed at regime change across the galaxy. But at some points in the story of Star Wars, a whole swath of worlds band together for the cause of independence from Coruscant. They want to separate and form a whole nother entity alongside the Republic. It's a pattern that has parallels in modern real world separatist movements, so it makes for another fascinating exploration into the politics of Star Wars. We will get into that just a little bit. But before that, we'll get to the plugs here. You can follow us on Blue Sky at Ion Cannon. It's ioncannon.bisky.social. And for Instagram, Twitter, and everything else, you can hop on over to at the SWU. Also, if you prefer audio, when we're done tonight, I will throw this up onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So just search Ion Cannon Podcast in the podcatcher of your choice, and yeah, enjoy the tingling in your ears. There we go. Of course, we are proudly part of the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network, and here on the Underworld YouTube channel, we got memberships, we got super chats, we got the comment boxes down below, and if you comment in there, comment whenever you want. We'll get to it when we can, including, you know, Daisy hyping us up for us, as always, very much appreciated. If you would like to support the channel and the network with a super chat or membership, we are most grateful. That not just to Daisy, to anybody who wants to. There we go. Yeah, we would be grateful, but again, comment down below, and we'll get to your comment when we can in the flow of the conversation. Also, we are on the Underworld Discord server. Check the link in the description below for to get into the Discord server. It's pretty clearly marked, I hope. And yeah, we're chatting all about Star Wars, about different things that are happening in the galaxy far, far away, and other franchises as well. There's lots of different channels on the go, and some events, some watch parties, some game nights. What's been happening there, Joel?
Well, first off, I just want to say shout out to a friend of mine's brother, my friend Ozzy, who I know on another Discord server. Their brother
Mm,
watches our podcast. So,
nice.
hi, shout out to you out there. Yes, this week on the Star Wars Underworld Discord, we are continuing our Mandoverse rewatch with Mandalorian Season 2, Episode
Mhm.
1, The Marshal, the biggest Star Wars bombshell that brought book character Cobb Vance to the streaming screen via the actor Timothy. I want to say Timothy Oliphant, but
Yeah,
oh,
all fine.
okay. I always want to say it's an Oliphant from Lord of the Rings. Timothy Oliphant,
Yeah.
which was a big deal and a big milestone, I think, for Star Wars canon nerds like us, which was fun.
Mhm.
We might do episode 2, but episode 1's pretty long, like pretty much a mini movie, and the only Star Wars Mandalorian episode directed directly by Jon Favreau himself, which also does the IMAX aspect ratio thing. So there you go. We're excited for that. Last week we did some games, and maybe the week after we'll do some games. But we are on a steady pace for Mando rewatches.
There you go. Gotta love Cobb Vanth refrigeration, Vanth moisture refrigeration. There, that's a good old office reference for you. Yeah, definitely check that out. Yeah, that was a great moment. You got the Marshall. We saw that happen. Last but not least, the tractor beam. It's back. There was a Star Wars comic that came out last Wednesday. I was indisposed. Otherwise, I was busy. But this week we're going to chat about it. Star Wars number 10, the finale, which I haven't read yet, but sorry, holding up. I haven't had my decaf tonight, so we'll see how well this goes. Yeah, Chris Abbott and I are gonna chat about Star Wars number 10 and the whole series, do a whole series review of Alex Seguro's run, such as it was, and I'm rereading it now, and it isn't bad. I'm actually enjoying it. It's always better. You're right, Joel. It's always better to read comics sequentially like that, just in one go. The rise of graphic novels and collected editions for that reason. But anyway, I digress. We're Chris Abbott and I are going to chat about this. That's Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Underworld YouTube channel. Check out the Tractor Beam Star Wars comics reviews. It's also on Spotify and Apple and on Blue Sky at the Tractor Beam. So please do check that out. Here's a comment about the Mandalorian episode. Yeah, great episode. I'm gonna watch it. I think I'm gonna watch it soon, just for fun. But yeah, that's the Tractor Beam. I don't know, Joel, you were waving your hand. I don't know if you had anything to. If you
Oh
wanted
no,
to say
I
anything
wasn't
there.
waving my hand. I was just waving to the
Okay.
commenter.
Oh, I see. Okay, fair enough. Okay, well, yeah. So that again, that's this Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Underworld YouTube channel, and we got our own podcast feed on that as well. Please do check that out. All right. There is some eyes on screen stuff we do want to get to, but first, Joel, what's the Sith? What's the deal?
So funny enough, it was something we talked about when we were talking about Darth Bane. I don't know how we got talking about Darth Bane, but we were talking about like his background, and it got me kind of thinking.
Yeah, because we're talking about
I
Plagueis and Tenebris and in mines and
yeah, and it got me
yeah.
kind of thinking. When it comes, like, for the most part, with the exceptions, of course, of Luke and Rey, and probably the future Jedi. Jedi don't really have lives pre being Jedi. They're always Jedi. Like, obviously, for at least 1,000 years they were, maybe longer. Right? Sith, on the other hand, they have lives before they become Sith Lords, more or less. At least all the ones in Legends that I know of, right? And it got me thinking, does the background of a Sith Lord affect kind of their career choice and kind of what kind of Sith Lord they are? Because I was thinking about Darth Bane, and look, he starts as a miner, right? He's in those mines. He yearns for the mines, as the adults say about the kids.
I think he
You
used
know,
to escape the mine, but
you know,
in his
he's a,
case,
he's,
but
he's a working man Sith
yeah.
Lord. Oh, he gets rich later. Um, Darth Xana, his apprentice. This is all legends. I don't know if in canon they're gonna go with this, but let's just go with legends. Xana, she was an orphan. She
Yeah.
kind of lived in the nothing world, and she was just an orphan raised by Bane, pretty much. I mean, she wasn't a baby, but she was definitely like 5 or 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Old enough to know what's going on a little bit. So you get to them, and
Yeah.
they make it big. I don't really know about the rest of the Sith Lords, but then by the time you get to Plagueis, he was born to these rich munes as kind of like a weird genetic experiment situation. And he kind of knows only luxurious life and typical mune life and banking. And then you get to Sidious, Palpatine. He's this bratty, rich noble from Naboo who's already interested in politics already. Um, and who just, and I always like to say he's a little psychopath who just Plagueis makes worse with magic. And then what's interesting is then you get Maul. All three of City's apprentices. You get Maul, who's is raised as a baby to be basically a Sith weapon.
Mhm.
In Legends, it's always a little bit more iffy if he even counts as a Sith Lord. Because Plagueis is
Yeah.
still around for most of his career, so it's
Yeah.
like he's kind of a weapon. Dooku is weird because Dooku is a former Jedi,
Mhm.
um, but a Count as well. So he both knows a Jedi, has Jedi training and wealth and opulence. And
Mhm.
then you have Anakin, who is just a slave boy and a Jedi,
Mhm.
and then eventually becomes Darth Vader. And I'm kind of like thinking about it, and then I'm thinking about like other Sith lords of the past who like were all former Jew. A lot of them were former Jedi at some point.
Mhm.
Chimera was a former Jedi, so that training probably sticks with him even when he's learning Sith stuff. And I'm
Mhm.
kind of just thinking to myself, okay, well, I do kind of wonder if like does that affect the kind of Sith Lord you're going to be when you get the job, right? It's like, and
Yeah.
I think to some extent,
I did.
probably yes. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, Bane obviously was going for the rule of two and stuff, and he got rich and started making connections, but he was obviously just starting out. He kind of knew that he wasn't going to be the
Mhm.
one to do the job. He kind of thought, but he definitely used a lot of that. I'm a self-made man. I'm a working man, self-made guy who
Mhm.
pulled up on my bootstraps and became the Dark Lord. And then you got Sidious, who, if you look at Sidious compared to the Sith predecessors, who just kind of like conquered the old-fashioned way, which is, all right, get an army, get your sword,
Mhm.
charge into the battlefield. And I always like to joke, how did Palpatine begin his conquest of the galaxy? He would always just go to all the villains and goes, first, I passed a bill to tax the trade routes. He knew
Yeah.
legislative procedure. And then
Sure.
Plagueis obviously is like
Mhm.
banking. And then it kind of goes, and then funny enough, I feel like Vader and kind of reverts
Mhm.
back to classical Sithism with just on the battlefield and as a former Jedi. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's just kind of my innate ramblings of does
Mhm.
the previous life of a Sith Lord create different types of Sith Lords, even if at the end of the day it's all the same power, selfishness,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. That's the one thing that always unites these people, even if the methods are different. So that's just kind of my
Mhm.
weird thought of the day.
I mean, the story kind of hinges on not all of it, but I mean, definitely Anakin's story, of course, hinges on his relationship to the Jedi. And so I think there's the big thing of former Jedi and everyone else.
Right.
Um, like
Which
the
is how
way
the
in the
Sith
galaxy
started
does.
as former Jedi. Which is
Yeah, but just to say, uh, Dooku and Anakin are, they have this similar thing in the sense. What I'm getting at is, uh, there's a particular edge to them when it comes to eliminating the Jedi and taking on the Jedi and eliminating them.
right.
Right? They have the zeal of the convert thing almost. Right?
Mhm.
We're with Maul, at least in the this comic that came out a number of years ago, the canon comic. She's like, oh yeah, this is what happened on Malachor 1,000 years ago. Now at last we will have our revenge.
Right.
So but yeah, I mean, Bane is interesting because, well, Bane is interesting also in light of Dooku and Anakin, because Bane's backstory, a big part of it was the Sith's backstory as this Brotherhood of Darkness, right? This
Right.
I don't know if that was the official name of the
Yeah, it
Sith
was
Order. Yeah, okay, I was right. Okay,
at the time. That was the
yeah,
Sith Order of the current time.
yeah. So this Brotherhood of Darkness, which was a brotherhood, it was dark, it was complicated, and they were all, but at least there was a bunch of them
Yeah.
around,
True.
and there was the sense of loyalty to a collective, more so than when the rule of two happens, and Bane explicitly rejects this, and so does Dooku. Just like Dooku rejects the Jedi Order, and Anakin rejects the Jedi Order, and Obi-Wan. I mean, Dooku rejects Yoda. Uh, so yeah, I think that part plays into it in terms of in the personal stakes, but I mean, that's the thing. Like, James Luceno gives Plagueis this backstory in order to make him. I mean, that's the thing, is his backstory becomes then his public persona, right?
Mhm.
Because everybody knows it's Hugo Damask, right? Everyone knows Senator and Chancellor Palpatine.
There are
You know,
Damask files. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that?
the Damask files. Yes,
He's got an island. He's got an
but
island.
also to say that, well, I don't know if Damask is the public figure, but definitely Palpatine by definition. And yet nobody knows that he's Darth Sidious. So, like you could read. I mean, this would be a fascinating book, biography of Palpatine from the perspective of someone who, like, maybe during the Empire or during the Clone Wars, who thinks he's actually the Grand Uncle Palps. Uh, the
Fun.
just anyway. My point being, it definitely affects the. I mean, definitely the public persona, their goals, their ambitions. Um, why Sidious has a very different reason for wanting the Jedi destroyed than Anakin does, than Vader does. Like
Very
for
true.
for Anakin, it's uh they they falsely accused Ahsoka. They would have kept Padme away. They like all these very personal relational reasons. And then for Sidious, it's no, they just cramp my style. And obviously more than that. But yeah, it really that why they're evil, why they see the Jedi as evil is different for different reasons. Yeah, so it's a good thought. It's a good storytelling point.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
All right.
I forgot to write mine down. I will say I finished Wayseeker, Acolyte Wayseeker, and yeah, it was interesting. I kind of it kind of leaves the story ends, sure, but it kind of implies how it ends. It's pretty basic implication, but yeah, what I was saying last week, I think, did I say this last week, that it really adds a lot of layers to Vernestra's character uh in this time period, because again, on the show she's just the not conniving politician, very shrewd, very cold.
She got a job to do, and she gotta do it, man.
She's got a job to do, and part of that involves killing off or letting Master Soul's secret die with him. And something that the young Vernestra would be like, what? These masters have done this? So this goes into why she's given into that level of cynicism, or that she's a cynic already.
Right.
And it was really fascinating, but also does show her heart, does show her influences. We This isn't that big of a spoiler. She has a recording of Stellan. She has a recording of Imri. So she still goes through those touch points and lets Indara in on that, and so therefore lets the reader in on that. And also, so how it gets Vernestra to where she is in the show, also gets Indara to where she is in the show. She starts off a lot like Wraith Silas. She starts off, something's happened, and she's like, there's an event that had happened before the book, before the story, that makes her afraid to, or yeah, well, I mean, we use this word way too much. It traumatizes her, and so she wants to just hide in the archives. And Yaddle says to her, "Hey, we got a mission for you. You want to go? You want to go? It's uniquely suited to your research and historical knowledge, because here's a figure from the Nile conflict that you got to go hunt down." So, really, really intriguing. Well put together, well written novel by Justina Ireland. And yeah, I'm kind of glad. I kind of wish I had read it earlier, just because very fresh with High Republic. But it was nice to go back into the High Republic a little bit,
What
even
should
though I
you read
didn't.
next?
Well, I'm currently reading something by C.S. Lewis, just
Ooh.
a thing on prayer, like one of his nonfiction things. My next Star Wars will probably be, I forgot it. I have a whole list on Instagram at MNEUG1138. You can check it out.
Nice.
But the Rogue One novelization's in there.
How about you read Rogue Squadron? That'd be fun. We can rejoin.
Yeah, good old Legends.
You're always looking for New Republic stories. I mean, that's a New Republic story.
True. And you mentioned last week very political implications, at least. Well, the Alphabet Squadron trilogy.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
but I also want to get back into
like
John Scalzi's Interdependency trilogy and Foundation as Kasimov and Star Wars adjacent Rebecca Roanhorse's independent novel or trilogy.
Cool.
So
I think what's funny is I think both the Rogue One novelization and Alphabet Squadron are Alexander Freed books.
Yeah.
He did Mask of Fear, so that's always
So that's why I'm like, oh yeah, because I got that novelization. I got it on Audible when it came out, and I just haven't gotten around to listening to it. So yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do. Making a good clip. I'm reading way faster than I did last year. So,
yay!
Yeah,
I just got through, and I'll try to move quick. I'm just saying, I got another chapter of Rogue Squadron. It's like, I still think you'd like it. You're looking for those New Republic stories. It's like it deals with a lot of the. It's more military than maybe politicians, but it still shows like how we got to deal with these things because it's not just we're ragtag rebels. We got to have good PR. We got to look good because we're trying to take the galaxy back from the Imperial remnant. So I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I know there's definitely those implications, which I think I may have a copy of it.
Nice.
I'll check somewhere. I'll think about slotting it into my endless book list. But I do have some canon books to read, so there we go. That's our week in Star Wars. Another thing that happened this past week, is we saw a trailer. And a trailer for real, an actual trailer for the Mandalorian Grogu. Not the beer commercial, not the truck commercial, but an actual trailer for the actual film. And you're gonna do something different. It's very good. It's a fun series. So Daisy, help me out here. I know, and anyone else, whoever else wants to help me out here. I know that the show on Apple and the novels are different, don't really have much to do with each other except for the basic premise. I'm knowing how maybe having a sense of how spoiler averse I am, how vibe averse I am. Vibe spoilers. I'm thinking I should read the book and then watch the show. But if anyone wants to, I mean, I watched Dom and I watched the first episode because he's seen most of it already. But man, it looks exactly like Coruscant. It's amazing. Nice. Very much Star Wars connected and clearly an influence on George in developing it. So reading Roadside Picnic. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Yes. Anyway, speaking of, there's the ticker at the bottom. We did watch a trailer. I only watched it the day it came out, which was Tuesday. So Chris and I talked about it. No, we didn't talk about it because there's no track team. So we're going to watch it again. And if this screws over our monetization or whatever, oh well. If Disney comes at us, they won't come at us. So sit back, enjoy, and then we'll talk about this trailer. Let's see.
Put myself on mute.
Mm-hmm. Hold on.
Hey, never touch the buttons. I can use some information.
Whoa, for this price, I'll tell you whatever you want.
I'm looking for a hut.
Close for the night. Thank you.
Gangsters, war criminals.
Long live the Empire.
We'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards.
This isn't about revenge. It's about preventing another war.
Strap in.
You will
suffer. And then it will be his turn.
Before going into harm's way, check your armor. The kid will live centuries beyond me. I won't always be around to protect him.
Are you scared? You should be.
Do we run? Or do we fight?
I like this kid.
What are you waiting for? Let's save the rest for after dinner.
Absolute cinema.
Literally,
It-
it is
'cause,
cinema.
Because
Yeah.
he's like the voice name confusion.
Carl Weathers.
No, the guy who actually does the meme, the cinema meme.
Oh, I don't remember. I don't know.
Martin Scorsese.
Oh, that
he's
guy.
He's in
Yeah.
he's the voice of
That's
the monkey
right.
creature.
That's right. He is. Yeah. So yeah, there you have it. The Mandalorian Grogu actual real trailer for real. Yeah, it definitely gives us a sense, gives us a feel of what the film is going to do. I mean, clearly, well, it's not going to just be Adventure of the Week. It's going to be tied more into the New Republic story. Joel, you pointed out the deck of cards from Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, and how they have all these Imperial remnant folks running around, and we see a meeting. Maybe is that Hoth? Maybe, who knows?
I think it's Hoth.
You think it's Hoth? We'll get to all this in a bit. Who might be in that meeting in a second, but in terms of, I'll throw this to you, Joel. Your overall vibes, overall thoughts and feels for this trailer. What was your reaction?
Oh, I mean, this was a very good trailer. This very much, I think. So, a couple things stand out. I mean, this trailer kind of gives you the basic. I don't know if it gives you the basic plot, but definitely gives you the kind of the idea of what this movie is about. I think the thing that stood out to me the most about this trailer was definitely showing Pedro's face very much in the trailer early on. I think we all kind of knew he was going to be in the movie, but I think there was always a little bit of doubt. So I think it's nice that here, at least, it's like, okay, even if it's just the third act or whatever, he's in the movie, guys. He's in. We see his face in the movie. He will take off his helmet, or his helmet will be taken off for him at least once. So do not fear, he's there. Okay, everyone, we good? We good. So yeah, it's certainly, I think it's still promising us a very simple, exciting adventure of, Mando's taking out the Imperial remnant one at a time. My guess is the Shadow Council's not liking that, and he's got to do something about it. And that involves Rada and the twins from the Book of Boba Fett and adventures and whatnot. And it's going to be a fun ride. And then, my guess is maybe at the end, there's a little bit, there's a little bit of like setup for like, hey, want to help out, getting ready for the big crossover event that's going to happen, hopefully. So, I still think that I'm not going to hold my breath of Thrawn showing up, but I could definitely see like a situation in that meeting where it's either a warlord of the Shadow Council or someone of the Shadow Council, or the Shadow Council in a different scene that we haven't seen yet, kind of like having a meeting of like, this Din Djarin is becoming a nuisance to our plan. Then, maybe Pelion's there, and Pelion's like, I am currently on Dathomir preparing for the operation. And then it's like, general audience is going to be like, what's going on? But we, the fans, know, like, we know what's happening on Dathomir. We know what's going on. So, yeah, I was very excited about that. And my second big takeaway, and this is actually more interesting, I think, and this is something weirdly that the Super Bowl trailer hinted at as well, is really showing Grogu coming into his own as a
Yeah.
character, kind of not as just the cute MacGuffin, but like, yeah, he's
Yeah.
gonna have to
So
kind of do things more on his own, and I think he and Din are gonna be separated for a little bit and have a
Mhm.
adventure. I don't think Din's dying. I know people are saying that because of that one line where it's like, he'll
Yeah.
always be around to protect him. But I do think that we're gonna see Grogu kind of really start
Mhm.
being his own independent character and equal to Din and the Mandalorian Din proper,
Mhm.
and probably, whether or not they're setting it up because they know it already, or they're just setting it up, or just planting the seeds because it's just good to have things ready just in case, for Grogu to kind of start to
Mhm.
journey his way post the Mandoverse, post and into the sequel era, and probably more likely beyond because he's going to
Yeah.
be around for that long. So, I think Grogu very much will make a big leap eventually into the future post Din being an old man and dead because he's a human.
Yeah.
So, I do think that's kind of the big takeaway, I think, out of everything for this movie is kind of Grogu being an independent actor and all
Mhm.
this.
Um, Mark Miller, Steve McNiven, Old Man Rogan, Old Man did John. I think did Charles Soule write Old Man? Who's the bow and arrow guy? Hawkeye.
I
Who
don't
wrote?
know.
I read it a little bit. Old Man Hawkeye. Who wrote this book? Excuse this. If it is, this is a Star Wars adjacent reference. Anyway, Old Man Hawkeye, number 7. I'm looking in the Marvel. Anyway, this great content here. No, Ethan Sachs. Speaking of Star Wars, sorry, Ethan, you wrote this. It was great. I read this before I'd met or heard of Ethan Sachs. Anyway, Old Man did Jarn. He needs to write the next one. He needs to write that actually. No, but it really, I mentioned the New Republic story or the New Republic storyline and the Imperial Remnant storyline. But I'm thinking, what's the relationship between that New Republic Imperial Remnant story and the Hutts and Embo, and if Embo's part of, assuming Embo's part of the underworld story. And I kind of wonder, maybe I'm wrong about it not being kind of adventure of the week in the sense of if the main story really is with the twins and with Rada and with
Mhm.
on Tatooine, on so maybe Boba Fett's going to show up in there too, but all those characters, and then the whole Empire story, Imperial Remnant story is, I mean, like you mentioned, the nod to the wider story,
Right.
and they're putting that in the trailer to get folks excited for it. Say, oh, it's a Star Wars. It's a Star Wars. They're Rebels versus Empire. Okay, but might not have that big of a play unless there's something fishy going on between the Imperial Remnant and the Hutts
I mean, I can
versus
see it.
Rada and the New Republic, maybe, or something. I don't
I
know.
can I can see that. Like, what if
Yeah.
Embo was hired by the Shadow Council to take
Yeah.
out Din because he's becoming a nuisance to their
Yeah.
operations, and then kind of Din's got to do something, got to hunt down whoever
Mhm.
hired Embo and take them out,
Mhm.
and then the Hutts. I wouldn't be surprised if the twins were in league with the Empire because Hutts
Yeah.
and the Empire tend to work together a lot anyway.
Yeah.
And
But and
what if Rada's
okay.
a good guy? What if
Yeah,
Rada's
that's what I'm saying. Like, what if, just like with Cobb Vanth,
yeah.
we don't know who that little Hutling is, but what if there's a version of the on-screen version of that is that Rada is the New Republic candidate, if you will, for daimyo or for whatever to inherit the Hutt clan legacy.
Mhm.
Because I mean, remember, he's the one with the backstory with the Republic, with the
Right.
late Republic at least. And so
Ouch.
yeah, I can see them being connected. I don't know if they will be so explicitly. Again, that'd be too good of fan service, maybe. I don't know. But it's possible. We've got lots of fan service lately, so in a good way. I mean, I use fan service in a good way. The last thing I'll say, you guys saw me chuckle a little bit, definitely with Grogu, especially. It has
Mhm.
the charm, and the more he comes out as a character in his own right, like you say, the more charming comic relief it's going to be because it's more of him. Even if there's also serious things like, is that Dagobah? Is that some other planet?
I think it's
that he's
Nalhada. I think it's all.
the one the very green planet that he's meditating on.
Yeah, I think it's Nalhada.
Okay, maybe he's cleansed it. I don't know because it looked
No,
too nice to be in Alhada. I'll say that.
Nalhada might have some nice places. It doesn't have to always be icky.
All right, who knows? We'll see. We will see. We will see May 22nd of this year. So it's only a few months from now. Lastly, on this point, before we get to the main topic, this did come up, so I'll just keep the ticker there. Whatever. Or no, maybe I did do a thing. Sorry, I did do this. Oh, hold on. Sorry, I'm messing things up. I need to drink my decaf sometimes. Whether the timeline, clarifying the rise of the First Order. Okay, so
Oh yeah, I'll get my lecture out.
yeah, so
I'll get my lecture.
we see this Shadow Council on this snowy planet. I'm like, is that Brendel? No, that can't be Brendel because it looks different. It's someone else on the Shadow Council, right? Who's chairing the meeting. But also thinking, okay, well, Brendel's there. He's not in the unknown regions. So there's a bit of I guess, is there a bit of a retcon? And whatever. That is whatever. And from Mando season 3.
Well, first off, we don't know if that's the Shadow Council. That just could be that Warlord's underlings. I actually don't think that was the Shadow Council. First off, and second, no, there's nothing that contradicts anything. Okay. So we have the fall. I have a whole list. I have like a made lecture. We have the initial fall of the Empire and aftermath. Mm-hmm. We have the Imperial hardliners. They go into the unknown regions. Ray Sloan, those cats. They're all gone. The Empire completely shatters. But we do have warlords. Gideon, Pelion, those other guys, the guy with the beard. Those are warlords who are just running their own little factions in the known galaxy. Mm-hmm. The Shadow Council are those warlords all decide, you know what? Let's work together to bring back the Empire. Hux probably got in contact with him because his faction in the unknown regions is making contact with the galaxy, with the Imperial Remnant in the known galaxy.
I see. So that's why Hux is in that scene on The Mandalorian.
Yeah, he's just commanding a faction. Now, it does seem that, according to Gideon, Hux and Pelion have the most resources, hence why Hux can send stormtroopers, fighters, and Praetorian guards. Now, Hux might not be saying how many forces he has, but he's definitely like, oh, I'm just an Imperial Remnant like the rest of you guys.
But he's calling in from the unknown regions and where he's starting the First Order. Okay.
Right.
That's true. It is a hologram. They can go they can be wherever they want.
Exactly, right? Now I don't know whether or not Hux makes trips back and forth, who knows? But I don't know. We'll probably see him in hologram form. Pelion's probably in the known galaxy with Thrawn doing Dathomir stuff.
Well, he was waiting for Thrawn.
Right. Yeah. So, and we all know that Hux is also working on something called Project Necromancer as well.
Which is, that's Exegol's in the known galaxy, right? Or
here's the thing.
Yeah.
Exegol's its own faction. Palpatine's got his own private faction that nobody knows about. He's hiding
Project
out.
Necromancer is Exegol ultimately, right?
It's a little vague as of now because the Rise of Skywalker novelization is a little interesting on that. So if we go by the novelization, Palpatine's already in his clone body. They might the Imperial Remnant might see Project Necromancer as some total other thing, and they're just using it for something else. I don't know
that they don't know the real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my guess, if I had to play just guess game, Din and the New Republic take out the Shadow Council, defeat Thrawn. Hux is probably going to be the last one standing, more or less, because he's in the unknown regions. And it's just basically, Hux is going to be like, well, we tried. Let's just go back to building the First Order, and we'll wait another 30 years.
Yeah.
Till we're ready. So, yeah, I don't think nothing has been contradicted, quite frankly. The timeline remains intact.
This isn't phase 2 of the High Republic where you have to send a droid if you want to communicate or anything. You just force Zoom, force Skype, force Zoom, force MS Teams in.
Exactly.
They're the Shadow Council, so they're using MS Teams.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, that makes sense. Interesting to see this whole part of the Mandoverse, this kind of tail end of it, be that bridge to say, okay, this is leading to the First Order. Yeah, I mean, I like that idea that Thrawn is defeated, and that's ultimately why and how the First Order becomes the big bad in the one big bad in the galaxy 30 years later or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of interesting that, the First Order, we always talk about how the First Order sees itself as like, we're not the Empire, we're better. But like right now, Hux and the Shadow Council are all just saying, long live the Empire. They just want to bring back the old Empire, where it's like by the time you get to the First Order, they seem like they want something different, kind of. Not really. But
I mean, kids.
That's true.
Kids these days. Like, we're talking about Brendel Hux. We're talking about Armitage Hux. Armitage Hux. That's my point, is it's a generational gap.
That's true. Although Brendel Hux is totally okay calling it the First Order, so
sure, but so is Pride, Enric Pride.
Right. So
and Enric Pride's all about, yeah. So
I don't know. I wonder if they've met Snoke yet or not. That'll be interesting one day to find out.
Yeah,
I hope
that'll be hilarious.
Like if Hux is already in communication with Snoke, and it's like he's just doing these other things. It's like on the side.
It's a side hustle.
Exactly.
Restoring the Empire is a side hustle. The real gig is the First Order. There we go.
Exactly.
That'll be hilarious when Snoke shows up again.
Yes,
because it's going to happen eventually.
Oh, that'd be glorious, right?
So, anyways, okay, thank you for that note. Clearing up the timeline. All right, time to get into the main topic, and I do want to be the one to kick it off, and then I'll throw it over to you, just because there's just in the last week, three real world examples, all three of them involving Canada, two of them involving the Olympic gold medal games. So, the Olympics were on, and I'm a bit of an Olympics junkie. And I
honestly forgot the Olympics were happening. That's how much I don't
So
watch
in 2 years, you will not forget the Olympics are on. It'll be in your face where it goes down in SoCal. But no, I'm a bit of an Olympics junkie. I live in a winter sports country, and my boys, my ladies, they were all in different gold medal games, and one sport I rediscovered was curling. And the reason I bring this up, so Canada played Team Great Britain in the curling, the men's gold medal game, and the women won bronze, but Canadian men won gold. But Team GB, and this is the funny thing with Team GB, is because the Olympics basically goes by UN statehood. If you're a UN member state, then you can have, I believe that's how it is, that you can have a National Olympic Committee. So there's no Team Scotland, there's no Team England, there's no Team Wales. It's all Team Great Britain, no Team Northern Ireland. I think Northern Ireland, you can choose which one you play for. But for curling, curling was born in Scotland. It is part of Scottish identity and heritage. So Team Great Britain is always represented. It really is Team Scotland. And so that was just to remember to think about. And even when I was posting about it, it's like, okay, Team GB, but the Scottish flag, and even their the coat things they were wearing, it was dark blue and white with a bit of red. Put it that way. Another gold medal game was sadly yesterday's men's hockey, and so for decades, there's always been some sort of Quebec contingent in men's hockey, or in hockey. I mean, the captain of the women's team is from Quebec, but there were this year and in a number of previous years, there haven't been any. Like when the NHLers have been there hasn't been anyone from Quebec on the national team. It's not that a slight; it's just that there wasn't anyone good enough to make the team, which is surprising because goalies at least used to be. So there's Quebec, this separate nation, is kind of behind. So Scotland, they're ahead with curling. Quebec is behind with hockey. Lastly, I promise I'm getting to the Star Wars here. Lastly, Alberta is the Texas of Canada, and Premier Danielle Smith, she gets up and makes a speech saying, yeah, we're gonna have a referendum on basically not giving any more money to, or not giving as much money to other provinces, having more freedoms constitutionally, and have the freedom to stop immigration, because clearly immigration is the problem. It's not, forget my financial mismanagement or my wanting our failing oil companies to save us, even though oil production is down drastically in Alberta, which is the lifeblood of Albertans is oil, crude oil. But no, it's immigrants clearly, and so Danielle Smith is going to hold a "Make Alberta Great Again" referendum because she represents the "Make Alberta Great Again" movement. And I bring all of this up. Okay, now I've come to the point here. We're talking about separatism. I'm talking about these distinct political entities that want more independence. It's a reminder that this is so closely intertwined with populism, with nationalism, with federalism. Federalism is a way to navigate these tensions. Populism and nationalism is maybe a source of those tensions. And especially like populism, there's a light side. You think of Quebec and how Maître chez nous, the Parti Québécois, they're all about, okay, well, English-speaking Anglophone corporations aren't able to take care of our people as well as a national government in Quebec City, so we're going to elect the national government in Quebec City, and by national I mean the identity, Quebec identity, to have more regulation, government programs and whatnot. So there's that. There's also the dark side of this nativism. Again, make Alberta great again. Some aspects of Quebec nationalism are like French nationalism, like in France, like the Front National, a little bit. So also anti-immigrant, and of course, we all know, and especially make Alberta great again. This whole blaming immigrants, like I said, it's really masking corporate oil interests and transportation interests and car industry interests. So what we get there is the way this is reflected in the duality of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. And what's fascinating, we don't spend enough time, as much time. It would be nice if we did. We'll get into this in a bit, but there's Mina Bonteri and the myth of the visionary Dooku. I don't know how much Bonteri was taken in by it, but
a lot of people probably were.
A lot of people were, but at the very least, Bonteri clearly, genuinely believes that a separate entity is, kind of reflecting the best ambitions of Quebec nationalism, of saying, yeah, we're these corporate interests that have too much say in Coruscant or Ottawa. We need to be able to be the masters of our own house here on the one hand, and then of course there's also the Trade Federation and the banking clan and the reality of Darth Tyrannus on the other. And so yeah, it's a complex topic that we'll get more into later, onto kind of the brass tacks of it. But first, Joel, give us some political theory. Why separate? Why does this happen?
I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it happens, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you ask. Separatism, like you said, nativism, nationalism, how well integrated is a multi-ethnic society. I mean, a lot of big countries have to deal with this. Smaller countries, not so much, because a lot of smaller countries tend to be a little bit more ethnically homogenous. At least in Europe. In Africa, it's a little different. That's depending on how many tribes and ethnic groups can you fit into one country. Ask the Belgians and the British. So just draw them lines in those offices.
Close your eyes and draw some lines.
Exactly. That's how you do it. And it's sort of the question of like, is it worth it or is it not worth it, right?
Mhm.
You know, a lot of when you think of like the ethnic nationalist movements, I think of the Kurdish people who
Mhm.
are in Iran, Syria, Iraq, Turkey.
Yeah.
They're fighting for an independent Kurdistan, or at least some
Mhm.
groups are. That's the dream. Um, Really depends on like what country. Like
Mhm.
Turkey and Iraq had it, and Syria. Iran probably doesn't. Iran, from what I've always heard, they don't really have a big separatist problem, even though Iran's a pretty multi-ethnic
Mhm.
country. But they've had centuries of integrating their ethnic groups into the wider
Mm.
society that it sort of doesn't really pop up. But at one generation, just a couple bad moves, and it's like it can,
Yeah.
ethnic nationalism can become a big thing. Soviet Union actually did pretty good in getting all their ethnic groups together and kind of knowing how to integrate and making sure that
Mhm.
no one really felt overly represented or whatnot for the most part. I mean, heck, a lot of the Soviet leaders weren't even Russian. One was Georgian, one was actually maybe, and I think maybe Brezhnev was Ukrainian. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
there were like lots of laws and rules of like, if you build X amount of mosques or churches in one province, you got to make sure you have an X amount of mosques too to make it equal. You got
Mhm.
examples like Yugoslavia that was
Yeah.
pretty well integrated for 30 years before Tito died, and then all that went to hell with the Yugoslav wars.
Hmm.
And a lot of, and again,
Yeah.
but again, it's sort of like the question. I don't feel good talking about it because I'm a white guy. I don't really know, but like, do you want these little ethnic enclaves? And it's sort of like, what do you benefit from it, right? Like,
Mhm.
sure, if you can get an ethnically homogenous nation, because you've always been an oppressed minority, I get that to some extent, but it's like,
Yeah.
what if it's all but it's like, what if the land you have is kind of crowded? Like, you don't got any resources, and you're just living in mountains. Where it's like, at least if you were part of the wider goal, it's like you probably would get some
Mhm.
support, unless of course you. Now that doesn't mean, of course. Now obviously it can depend on how well integrated the society was. There are definitely some ethnic groups where it's like, oh yeah, you're the oppressed minority, and the majority does not give a what about you.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's very very hard. Oh, we got one from Daisy. Iran
Mm.
has a couple of separatist movements. Both are at low at the moment. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, every country will have separatist movements,
Sure.
but like everything has a separatist movement to some extent. But a
Mm.
lot of it's gonna, but their support's really gonna have the support's really going to matter if kind of are they getting
Mhm.
big backing from somebody, be it a foreign power, like the U.S. sometimes, how we like to support
Yeah.
separatist movements, and also how well the government has done in terms of in terms of just integrating the groups into wider society.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a back and forth of like the foreign backing, but also it's like how competent the government itself was at the time.
Mhm.
And when it becomes incompetent or they start making mistakes, then its separatist movements can go from, these radicals are always shouting to like, oh shoot, now they got an army. Not
Mhm.
good. So there's a lot of that, which we see in Star Wars again, where, yes, there might have been tensions, obviously, between the Outer Rim and the core world, but again, what gave the combination of Republic's own mistakes and, of course, cis machinations and corporate
Mhm.
machinations
Yeah.
turned what were like, little red ambers into flames of chaos. Um, so there's that as well. I'm just going through the notes. So a lot of it is kind of
Mhm.
that, and then of course we can get into later a little bit of like what's the difference between separatism and national liberation, colonial independence, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I'll just say kind of my kind of secret hot take is that overall, I'm not a big supporter of separatism in
Mm.
general in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Um, Now, I think sometimes it's a case by case basis, and I think that I definitely understand why.
Yeah.
Like maybe I understand why the Catalonians under Franco would want independence from that guy, because that guy
Mhm.
sucked. Obviously, the Kurds in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was in charge,
Yeah.
understand that one because what he did, yikes. Um, but I also think to myself, sure, you get like your own little ethnic independent nation,
Mhm.
but you're gonna have a lot of trouble going it alone, like truly going it alone, especially if you're not a country that has a lot of natural resources. Like when Yugoslavia breaks up, yeah,
Right.
Serbia gets all the good stuff because they were already the majority in Yugoslavia anyway, so they get the good army and the good resources and the good infrastructure. Meanwhile, poor Bosnia, it's like that just country just imploded and everybody tried to kill each other, which is a
Mhm.
shame because they actually did live pretty well together for a while. Or I think of the U.S. and it's like if the U.S. were to break up into 50 different countries, independent
Yeah.
nations, California probably could do okay by itself. What about freaking Mississippi?
Yeah.
What's there in Mississippi? Uh, I don't know. Desert,
Or Rhode
rocks,
Island.
Rhode Island. You know, well, they have a
Mhm.
coastline. Coastline. I'm
That's
thinking
true.
more like the countries in like the middle. It's like
The
if
landlocked states. Yeah.
going in alone, like oh god, like
Mhm.
there's a reason why you're part of a wider federal government.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like I don't know, man. It's like even some of those former Soviet republics that broke off. I mean,
Mhm.
Ukraine and Russia and the still in the Baltic nations did fine because they were already pretty okay. I mean, they were pretty wealthy on their own. And
Sure.
Kazakhstan, we had lots of oil. Uzbekistan, Tajikistan is like going it alone. Like you're. I mean, maybe you can. They were the poor Soviet republic, but at least they got the central government to back them up and to give them an extra boost to supplement their budget. So,
Yeah.
that's kind of why I always say like, it's nuanced, but I think that separatism overall doesn't necessarily lead to good things unless
Mhm.
depending on how big a chunk you're getting out of it. And even then it's still going to be chaotic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I guess Matthew, I'll just ask you, what are your thoughts on just separatism as a concept and as a practice?
I mean, it very strongly depends on the Westphalian assumption of nation, therefore state. Often, not always, but often. Um, it depends, or at least depends on, like you said, if an integrated federalism, that a well balanced federalism that can say, hey, yeah, we'll help you out because we're in the process of state building. Sure, it can make sense. There's the major change that has appended all that. Well, I guess two. I mean, I keep thinking about this book that came out in the 90s, Jihad versus Book World, and how um we are going between in these two different extremes of really intense tribal identities and really grand, massively overarching globalized integration. And so the thing is, does separatism make sense? I think the conclusion that Quebec came to is actually no, it doesn't, because they can have a better shot at being a part of the global community, working with Ottawa and going through Ottawa. And that's the thing. If they have the values of peace building, of trade, of economic growth, that does require. I mean, that's the thing. Uh, you know, I mean, you would think Mark Carney's speech, yeah, it had a lot of great, nice platitudes. What he's talking about is greater economic integration, and in part it's a bulwark against Trump, but just because that's what he wants, anyways. Uh, and yeah, so I can see. I mean, that's the thing. It's one of these nuclear options, right? It's we don't trust, and we're not capable, of working with the federal system, because that's usually where we see it, right? I guess is it's a federal relationship that's gone sour. It isn't. I mean, I guess with Franco, it was a unitary
Maybe
system.
though
I mean,
it's a military dictator, so
yeah, and so well, yeah, but then, I mean, here's the thing with the UK. It's it's technically unitary, but the that separatist movements in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland have at least pushed towards a federalism, right, with the devolved home countries, home parliaments. So I don't know what my answer is. to say I understand, especially being a bit of a lefty myself, I understand the need to say, are we taking care of our people? But do we take care of our people by having greater sovereignty? And that was the big thing with Quebec, is having greater sovereignty, maître chez nous, masters of our own house, or do we do it by having a more active role on the world stage? Now, again, having sovereignty could enable that, but not likely, right? Quebec would always be a junior partner to Canada, at least for the long term. Whereas, okay, if you're the prime minister and you're from Quebec, well, there you go. And so, and Alberta is really souring me on it, because we're seeing what they're seeing. I mean, really, is they're seeing what's going on in those United States and say, oh, looks pretty nice, looks pretty good. Curbing civil rights and propping up corporate interests at the expense of actual economic development and growth and integration and developing a society. So, yeah, that also to say, I grew up, I grew up being told, because my parents don't like Quebec separatism, because my mom's side I was from Montreal, Anglophone from Montreal, where they're the minority. That's the odd thing, is Anglophones in Quebec are a minority, and so they've wanted to say stay connected with Canada. Of course, how many people in Quebec speak English anyway, and partly because of tourism, right? Joel, if you went to Montreal, you would have no problem. You'd speak English. Everyone speaks English. Just say you're from California, not the US, because which kind of, but yeah, even Quebec City. So the short answer is it doesn't make sense in our globalized era with the internet, with English language, with English language being everywhere, media being everywhere, and also with tending to be more social democratic values. Maybe that's the switch. That globalization has pushed the social democratic left wing, for lack of a better term, ideological position from saying, okay, we need a government that has the right scope and scale for us to take care of these people, to, oh, this world is so integrated, can we be global citizens, and that will be better, make us better citizens of where we are. So yeah, it's complicated, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's also complicated because, let's face it, US, Canada, Russia, China, especially these countries that have a lot of ethnic groups and separatism, they're all empires or old empires, or got their territory through empire in some way. Like, Russia is not big because that's just the natural Russian border. No, like, the actual Russia is like this big, and then it just kind of went that way to
like
Siberia.
The Moscow,
yeah, and then China obviously kind of went over there, and then all of Asia, and then US and Canada, good old Britain.
So I'll say this, especially Canada and the US and the UK got
they got the conquest of Wales and Scotland,
but got their territory through imperial expansion, have their population through immigration, which is of course connected to imperial expansion, right? I mean, the reason why, people from British colonies coming to the UK, coming to Canada, people from I don't know, people or the American dream, the American imperial expansion of the land of opportunity. Well, people come to the land of opportunity, and either they're probably in for a pretty rude awakening, but that's the thing, is immigration is a result of increased imperial expansion. That's another major thing, especially with Quebec and Alberta. A major tension is um, immigrant populations are going to want to be part of Canada more, because first of all, that in Quebec, because they're somewhat more likely to be Anglophone, I think, but also because they've had to become Canadian citizens and gone through that process of moving. Their frame of reference is different, so that, but also, yeah, I mean, I wonder if there is, again, zeal of the convert folks French-speaking folks who go to Quebec and like, oh heck yeah, vive le Québec libre, which was Charles de Gaulle went to Quebec City, bypassed Ottawa. It's pretty funny in retrospect. That's my other answer is
Gaulle didn't like the British that much, so
No,
he was always
that's true. But that's all part of my other answer is that separatism, it isn't relevant anymore, given at least given in democratic societies, given globalization. Is kind of my answer.
Well, I guess this because that can get into something Star Wars related.
Yeah. Wait, is this a Star Wars podcast? Sorry.
I know, right? And that is and this is something I think we talked about a little off screen, but for
Mhm.
another topic, but we can kind of bring it up here because this is a good place to it.
Mhm.
At what point is a country just too big? At some point, like that's always kind of the question to
Mhm.
ask. Like, is there such a thing as a too big country?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, look at Russia, China, U.S., Canada. Canada's well, and then you get population as well. Like
Yeah, that's the big difference. Yeah, but,
India,
yeah.
they're a good one. That's a big
gosh.
country. India's huge.
Yeah.
Because like I've always said, the big countries are probably the most multi-ethnic. They got the language, like India's
Mhm.
got a bajillion different languages. Russia, like there's no such thing as there's no one Russia. There's a million Russia. There's why
Mhm.
one of their provinces have autonomous republic, like
Yeah.
Chechnya is a autonomous republic. It is their Quebec. It's but
Mhm.
more brutal.
Yeah.
There's a dark story with Chechnya there.
Yeah.
You know, um, it's a country that's too big for its own ego.
That's good.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
China,
That's a good point.
everyone thinks it's all Chinese. It's like,
Mhm.
no, China's very diverse and
Mhm.
complicated, and it's not just Communist Party and Xi Jinping do what I say. I mean,
Mhm.
it's way more complicated than that. If you study Chinese politics, it's like and more devolved actually than you would think.
Mm.
But I don't want to get into the complications of China's government at the moment. Um, and it's sort of the question of, well, should we just have a more independent countries and just start drawing more lines on the map? We didn't draw enough lines. Or and this is something I think even ex-colonial countries need to kind of deal with, unfortunately
Mhm.
or fortunately, because there's kind of in Africa, there's kind of one of two lines of thought. Either you have we need to break this up even more because obviously our borders were imposed by the
Mhm.
colonial powers that be, for sure. Then there's the other thought, and this is something I kind of do agree with, and even Latin America probably needs to think about this too, is I forgot Brazil. Brazil's a big country.
Yeah.
Is the idea of, one of the big dreams of a lot of the old independent movements of Africa was the U.S. of Africa.
Mhm.
Let's federalize Africa, so we're not just a bunch of bajillion little states that some of us don't even have good resources. Like
Yeah.
we actually need to come together even more and like form a federation and stuff like that. They've
Yeah.
tried, but they've always failed for a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
Sometimes U.S. reasons, sometimes their own. It's complicated.
Sure.
And, it's sort of like, if anything, it kind of proved that maybe again the opposite needs to happen more. Like maybe Venezuela and Brazil and Argentina, and if they want to ever get out of imperial yoke, they got to kind of maybe start federalizing even more.
Mhm.
They kind of need to start, really start uniting even more and developing their own. Like look at the
Yeah.
European Union.
Yeah. Well,
There's
that's the big example.
that's
Yeah.
the big example there. Although Europe can probably be more independent from the U.S., and I think that's actually a good thing in general, even
Mhm.
regardless of who the president is. But Europe obviously is not Europe. I mean, you got Germany, France, very different countries.
Mhm.
But there's kind of a lot of talk about maybe the EU needs to be even more
Mhm.
federalized in a way, like more of a singular foreign policy and integrated society to make it stronger and stand up and
Mhm.
kind of be its own thing, sort of like what the Soviet Union kind of was, but without the single party state.
Yeah,
But
through a democratic process.
and that too,
Yeah.
but it's sort of again, it's sort of like um instead of making the world even smaller and smaller, where it's a bajillion tiny countries,
Mhm.
maybe you kind of need to make it bigger, and then that kind of gets into questions of like, well, again, how big can a country be? At the same time, the big
Mhm.
countries are the ones that do better than the small ones, with some exceptions, of
Yeah.
course. But
Yeah.
even then, there's reasons why and whatnot. So again, with Star Wars, it's like, do you want a bajillion different independent planets that are just all going at it, or do
Mhm.
you kind of want to have these planetary blocks and whatnot? Because probably stronger together than divided. And how big is too big, but how small is too small?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're getting at is that there's these two extremes,
Mhm.
right? And this is probably where the topic came from, because I think a good topic in maybe a few weeks is to say why one Coruscant republic, why one Coruscant empire. Um, because here's the thing. So there's the extremes of one, at least maybe very tight federation,
Mhm.
and a confederacy of independent systems, right? I mean, there's the Clone Wars, but
Yeah.
also to say, okay, depends on the context, right?
Right.
I'll say this. Well, so first of all, there is a move. You're right. There is a movement for European federalism, and by that it means greater political integration beyond their economic integration. I mean, there are definitely movements for Latin American integration as well. I actually did take a course. Well, I took a course on North American integration. That's in the that this is fine dumpster fire. Because I mean, here's the thing: there's Brexit. I want Ken entrance sometimes. I kind of have this fantasy about that, but I don't know. I mean, that's kind of what got me excited about Carney's
Wasn't that
speech. Is like,
wasn't that the
yeah,
World Trade Organization was supposed to more or less be? And everyone hated that.
yeah. Well, again, that's supposed to be
Not the
lots
World
of
Trade Organization. NAFTA. There we go.
yeah. Well, no, nobody hated that. I mean, people were they
I
it
know a
had
lot of
issues.
people. I know a lot of people on my side hated that. That was the
Sure,
beginning of the end.
it had issues. NAFTA had issues, but um, I mean that I thought NAFTA was just um recognizing what was just already there, given the geographic reality of this continent with these three
But to be
countries.
fair, Canada's
Yeah.
in America's economy, they're still pretty integrated. It's going
Oh
to take a
yeah.
while before you guys to
Well,
wean
that's why
off
the
of,
tariffs are such a shock, right?
which are
Anyway,
now
to say
apparently
that,
illegal. I don't know anymore.
yeah,
It's
sure.
confusing.
Well, yeah, Congress finally kiboshed
No,
them,
the
but
court did. The
oh, the
court did.
courts did too. Okay.
They struck it down.
What was I gonna say? So yeah, there are these movements. Here's the thing. One of the biggest, so there's that true. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, there's going to be greater integration. I mean, Star Trek poses this. Charles Soule's comic Undiscovered Country imagines greater global integration, while the U.S. cuts itself off and then carves itself up into different zones, different basically independent states that are sort of dependent on each other, but doesn't quite work out that way. Uh, so yes, when I visited Washington D.C. and I saw the U.S. Department of Agriculture buildings plural, the sprawling campus on the mall. It's just very Roman. Like, what is this single entity regulating and organizing agriculture for the entire United States? The Department of Education. Like, why is one department in Washington responsible for administering education across the country? Now, part of the reason is the Commerce Clause and preventing Kennedy's attempt to prevent racist education, which is a good thing. But yeah, it seems to be. I mean, the reason it's so education, healthcare, and I mean, I don't know about agriculture, but the reason it's so well agriculture with factory farms, all these agricultural practices. The reason it's so uh, stalled and so I forget what the word is, static. Not that's not the right word, but um, lethargic is you have one. You talked about being too big. One department administering what 330 million. The Ontario Ministry of Education is responsible for one province. Ontario Ministry of Health is for one province. It's the biggest, but still, and that's only what 8 million, 6 million, 8 million. I forget how big Ontario is.
Well, I
So,
think our remember we're federal system too. I think we're even more decentralized than Canada, quite frankly. Still,
I mean, maybe I'm wrong about, but my sense is,
like we don't even have a single election rule. Every state administers its own
sure,
election. We don't have one
but that,
election. We have 50 different ones all at the same time.
I think that's one of the exception that proves the rule. My sense is
It's like
a
everyone
lot
who
of
thinks
these.
that Trump can cancel the election or just wrong. He can't actually do that.
No, yeah,
he
just
tweeted, but he can't tweet.
but I'm talking about the executive branch, and there's the bureaucracy, and the reason bureaucracy has such a bad name is because it's massively overloaded in the U.S. Speaking of elections, like thinking about elections in India, why? I mean, elections in the U.S. Oddly enough, elections in India, elections in Russia are so prone to corruption because they're so unwieldy and so hard to administer. At least in India and Russia. Not that Russia really has free and fair elections, but like with India, they have to do elections over a whole month, and you have to have different. I don't understand. I can't wrap my head around how
India
that
is
even
big.
is a thing.
India is
A
very
billion
big.
people. I just don't. Anyway, so yeah, to answer your question, yes, absolutely, countries can be too big, and so that's maybe another reason for separatism. In that way, is to say this just not. I mean that was kind of the Quebec argument, and probably the Catalan argument. I think with sub-Saharan Africa, I mean the issue is a bit deeper in that the colonial powers really disregarded kinship ties and traditions. I mean
Draw
that
them lines. Draw them lines.
right, like they close their eyes, just let's cut off these people groups, cut off families effectively, because the concept of a family is different in different parts of the world, different cultures. So
I mean, that's why out of all the African countries, Egypt, a little bit of Ethiopia, although Ethiopia's having problems right now, are the stable is because because Egypt's been a civilization for hundreds, 5,000 something years. They kind of have they kind of know what their history is. Same with like Iran. Like that's why Iran compared to the other Middle Eastern countries is a lot more stable because Iran's got this. A, they were never technically colonized, and B, they kind of developed their borders and society over thousands of years from the days of Cyrus the Great. So,
though I mean Egypt is now also looks to the Middle East. I mean it's also part of the Middle East.
True. Well, Egypt now not that multi-ethnic. They're just Arabs.
Yeah. So anyway, so Star Wars,
right? Yeah, well, it's all connected. So we talk about the real world stuff. Let's kind of get into like the three big separatist factions and kind of what they say about the galaxy. I put the Confederates. I realized I kind of put the Confederacy on top. I'm actually gonna let's go back. Let's go in timeline order for a second.
Okay.
Go to the Nile. Let's start with the Nile because they're kind of the first attempt at separatism in the Republic. And I think what's interesting is that we know of. I mean, I guess technically when the Sith empires ruled half the galaxies, like there was always two big nations. Although I don't think that was separatism. I just think that was just the Sith, like we're conquering these worlds and we're gonna get to Coruscant one day. But that's when the galaxy would divide between the Sith Empire and the Republic, and just always battle it out, light and dark, old-fashioned fantasy style. But as we know of in the timeline, Nile or the first attempt at separatism. And I think it's interesting how, compared to what the next big attempt will be, this Nile separatism was almost a quasi accident. In a sense of sort of like Marcion Road, like, okay, I'm gonna cut off this part of the galaxy. It's not even like gonna be half of it. It's gonna be like, I don't know, a third.
Not even, like, maybe a fifth.
Maybe a fifth.
Yeah.
I wish they had a map of what the inclusions over, like, just to kind of see like how much did he actually
Yeah.
get? Because sometimes the book makes it feel much bigger than it
There's
probably was.
High Republic Adventures has a map.
Ooh, I gotta look at that map.
Yeah, I'll look it up. Yeah.
And it's sort of like, this is Nile territory. Suck it, Republic.
Pretty much.
And that's kind of it. And Marcion just like, okay, like there's not even, I feel like, how much was there actually real support for the Nile separatist achievements? I mean, I know, not Martyr Road, Staros. Staros thought like, oh, maybe I can make this into something. But obviously Marcion just Marcion about everything, that he didn't really have that deep support outside of like, just don't kill me. It was like, if any rich people or elites tried to please him, it's just like, don't kill me, please, and you're crazy pirates. We'll give you support. I mean, some people join because kids these days, they're like, yeah, but it didn't seem to go that deep. It didn't seem really to be something that it didn't seem to be something that they liked compared to what would come after with Dooku. But it was the first attempt, for sure. And maybe it gave an idea of like, oh, maybe we can one day secede. But I didn't have the support really. It didn't have the infrastructure. It didn't have the corporate backing. Oh, I thought I heard a beep for some reason. Okay.
I said true.
And so it collapsed the minute Marcion let go of the storm cloud because he didn't care. So it is interesting. The Nile is sort of the first attempt at separatism, but there's no real ideology behind it. It is kind of there. What is the ideology here? No outer rim freedom. There's just, I'm Marcion. I conquer. Nah, 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 nah. Now I'm gonna blow everybody up. Goodbye.
I mean, sorry, good.
No, that was my point.
I mean, there's something kind of similar to Palpatine in the way of with Marcion. I mean, at least in The Rise of Skywalker, right?
Right.
That it's all about his own legacy and his own
ego.
His own ego. It isn't about power in itself, which with, I guess, Palpatine in the prequels, as far as we know, and during the Empire, it was, until you realize, oh, I should try and live forever. I should really get on that.
I mean, I think Palpatine and Marcion wanted to govern the galaxy just as equally. I think the difference is Palpatine at least got to inherit a bureaucracy that's like, I'll let the mobs and the bureaucrats do what they normally do anyway. But
well, he grappled onto the bureaucracy and then he inherited it.
Right.
Marcion, what's bureaucracy? Why do I care about bureaucracy? I can't do the voice. Why do I care about bureaucracy?
Why do I care about bureaucracy? That's how you do it.
Because that's something. Gira, she tried to make a real state, tried to make a real go of it. Yeah, it's true. There isn't that much, although it does take on, at least to some extent, the grievance of the Outer Rim, which again we brought this up. If a more consolidated, centralized authority isn't taking care of people on the periphery, they're going to want to be masters of their own house. I mean, that's also the Alberta grievance a little bit. I mean, it feels the rural grievance, especially. And so, you see a little bit of that, except that, in the stories we see, it's Marcion's he's a bit of a conqueror. He goes in and rules through fear. Sounds familiar. He doesn't try and get popular support. He's just has this band of marauders, band of raiders, go around and basically separatism by blaster point, effectively, and naturally. So oddly enough, he becomes this smaller empire, if you will, in which star systems want to slip through the fingers, and different families, different houses want to. So, yeah, I mean, he's tried to. I mean, it's separatism in order to create a fiefdom, separatism by accident. I can kind of see what you mean. Although, I mean, not accident in that, the Stonewall is a real thing. They're really able to put up an actual closed border that destroys ships on impact. But yeah, it's I mean, chicken or egg. Here's the thing, because we're going to talk about the separatists, talk about the First Order. Chicken or egg. I've always thought it be the source of separatism in the galaxy in a lot of ways. I think that's part of what Team Luminous is saying, is this is the first real organized, like you said, the first real organized separatist movement, almost giving people the idea that this could be a thing. And when you later on, when you get someone like Mina Monteri, who wants to make a real go, someone like Eurostaros, Mina Monteri, former galactic senators on Coruscant who want to make a real go of it for different reasons, gives them the idea to do that. So also gives the Trade Federation the idea to do it. So I've thought that quite a bit. And yeah, it definitely sets the precedent, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, certainly until we find out that the Sith Empire also always controlled the Outer Rim, like it did in Legends, which that's always how it worked. Where it's like the Sith Empire would always control the Outer Rim world, and the Republic would get the core, and then that's how it's survival.
Kind of a separatist thing, right?
Kind of. Although the Sith always want to take over the core, because they just want to take over everything, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Markian didn't care about. I mean, that's the thing. Markian didn't care about Coruscant. That's like Gero. He sends her to Coruscant to stick her away in the corner to try and negotiate. But no,
Right.
like that's the thing. He wants, like Palpatine, he wants to be the only important person in the galaxy.
Right.
And different ways, because to him, he's the only important person in the galaxy.
Exactly. Now, obviously, we get the Count Dooku, of course, and he actually tries to get some actual separatism. Building the Outer Rim world. Talk about how the Republic's corrupt and we need a new system from scratch. Unlike Marcion, I think, again, like you say, one of the reasons why Count Dooku is more successful, I mean, outside, of course, the Sith Lord knows it all, is like he actually gets powerful, influential people to back his cause, not just the corporation, but like actual idealist senators who yeah, we want our planets to be free and from this corruption, and it sucks, and all the local planetary governments are like, yeah, Dooku, let's join him, he can be our rallying point, and then we can all form this confederacy together where planets are more equal, and Dooku's gonna be the guy, he's gonna kind of be the thing that we are spearhead.
Obviously, Count Dooku was a visionary.
Yeah, and then obviously Dooku can sustain it because he's got the mega corporations backing him up and giving him money and destroy armies and whatnot. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the idea. Is like, obviously all the Republic was very big, and then Dooku's like, hey, this Republic is not serving you and these planetary governments. Like, I think that's a big difference between Marcion and this. It's like, the actual planetary governments where if planets are provinces / states / nations, sovereign planet, like the president of the planet Raxus is like, yeah, we're gonna join Dooku, screw the Republic, we're gonna join his government, and and then the other senators and join up and whatnot. So Dooku actually gets to form the Separatist and form this, basically the Star Wars version of the Confederacy from the U.S. Civil War. We always never talk about the fact that the Confederacies, the Clone Wars, is actually probably more based off the Civil War than it is actually like World War One. Something we never think about. Actually, I think we should think about more, because I think that's what the Clone Wars is based on. I mean, it's called the CIS. We call the Confederacy So, I think we got to think about that more. And also the fact that it was
Mhm.
also during the Civil War where the U.S. government actually started centralizing. Like, I think
Mhm.
we forget how decentralized the
Yeah.
U.S. government was before the Civil War. Like, there's a real argument to be made. We became an actual nation after the Civil War in a
Mhm.
way we just weren't. Like, we were called the United States, but we weren't United States singular. It was more like United States
Yeah.
truly plural. Like the U.S. government. Do you know that the U.S. government before the Civil War was not actually allowed to print money? We weren't allowed to do that. We didn't do that
I think
because
I
it was
knew
like,
that.
but it's
Yeah.
like after the Civil War, that's when like we actually started printing centralized money and
Mhm.
currency and really got more of a sense. Like the federal government had like, no, we are one nation, and we are
Mhm.
not going to let these rebels, because that's how we saw the Confederacy, but not as an equal nation. Like these rebels, you can't do that. You can't
Mhm.
separate. So get back here, or we're sending in the army, and we
Right.
did. I think that's another thing we don't talk a lot about when we talk about Clone Wars. It's
Mhm.
they don't see it as two equal states fighting. It's like these are rebels.
Yeah.
You are a rebellion against against the republic, against the legitimate Republican government. You cannot legally do this.
Mhm.
Prepare to go to war.
Yeah.
We're gonna kick your butt. Um, I mean, here's a question for you, Matthew. If it's Alberta, right? That's the one that's doing
Yeah.
this. If Alberta says we're separating, goodbye, Canada,
Yeah.
how would you feel? Mark Carney's like, no, you can't. Send in the army. Don't care. Go, go. Send in
They
the
wouldn't
military.
need to send in the army. There would be other mechanisms
Well,
first.
if it came to that, you know,
It's a
you're
good question.
rebels. You're a rebel.
I mean, there are bases in Alberta.
Well, that's actually an interesting thing about
I mean, the main the town I lived in, where I actually experienced firsthand the rural angst and complaint against central, even Edmonton, which is an incredibly progressive city. It's an island of orange amidst the sea of blue. Um, but especially definitely Ottawa and Toronto. Um, they were there anyway. The rural and the military is the main training base for the Canadian Army is across the street from that town that I was living in, and so really integrated into it. So yeah, that's a good question. I have no idea.
But I mean, it is interesting. Like that's kind of more or less what Palpatine wanted. I mean, obviously, it's all a big
Mhm.
false flag conspiracy compared to the U.S. Civil War, which is more complicated for sure.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, baseline is the South secedes. Lincoln and the federal government like, nah, you can't do that.
Mhm.
And they're like, yes, we can. No, you can't. And we're gonna just go to war and
Okay.
drag you, kicking and screaming and shooting back in there.
Yeah.
Which is how a lot of civil wars kind of do start, where it's like, now, to be fair, it wasn't for
Mhm.
like ethnic regions. It's sort of more like we want slavery and we want this economy that we want and
Yeah.
privileges and local elites kind of all getting together and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I mean, like
Mhm.
separatism also is part civil war. Like the breakup of Yugoslavia was
Mhm.
a civil war.
Right.
Where at first the central federal government was like, "Hey, get back here," and then eventually they're like, "No," and then it gets out of control, and then it's like, "No,
Yeah.
never reunited after that." Soviet Union could have been a civil war, but Gorbachev and the Soviet were just so tired, like it just kind of like petered
Mhm.
out, and then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, uh,
I get it.
okay, it's kind of now getting to a violent place with the Ukraine war, which is kind of like,
Mhm.
in some ways, I feel like, I don't want to get too into sort of like, uh, sort of like, oh, we're finally getting to that spot, which probably should have happened at the start, but like it didn't, and sort of like
Interesting.
it just like kicked the can down the road until finally somebody was like started getting violent again. It's like now we're kind of really going to settle the score of like what happened after the fall of the Soviet Union, and it's like who
That's
belongs to where
interesting.
these territories belong to, right? Because again,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
fall of the Soviet Union, it's complicated. It's not as black and
True.
white as I think the West wants to make it out to be. I don't want to get into it too much.
Mhm.
Um, I'll recommend the book later after this.
Yeah.
That might be something you should read. Um, but basically, what I
Mhm.
think what's going on is like Soviet Union just kind of peters out. It
Mhm.
collapses. There's no real fight. And then you get the 90s Russia, and then all the stands are now independent nations. And
Mhm.
now we're kind of getting into this place where it's like Russia's strong enough. It's kind of
Mhm.
now it's kind of like now we're getting a little violent about it. Like we're still wounded about it, and we're kind of like we're gonna settle the scores, and kind of this is where like the more Yugoslav violent separation happens, and it's that's what I think Ukraine's partially about, among other
Yeah.
things. Because what's interesting, I'm sorry, I'm turning this to
Okay.
Russia's
One more point, and I have a counterpoint for you, but go
history
ahead.
lesson where Russia did want to try and keep its influence in the former Soviet states as like a confederacy, where it's like
Mhm.
you can
Well,
be
there was a confederacy of independent states, right?
yeah, and
They
Russia,
competed in the Olympics in 92 or 94.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Russia's kind of been like, okay, you can be independent, but you still got to be economically dependent on us. And
Mhm.
with the Ukraine thing, when Europe, it's sort of been more of a toss and turn, and then
Yeah.
you get the Ukraine war. But yeah, I'm sorry. My
Well,
point is,
sorry.
it's muddy.
Yeah, I see your Soviet Union. I raise you the Russian Empire,
Sure.
because with Ukraine, it seems to be more. It's a lot more about ethnic identity and territory, um, and the ability to extend capitalism, and Russian capitalism, if you will, into more
Right.
territory, and a buffer against other empires, aka the EU, like you mentioned, but
That's
and orthodoxy is a big thing, right? Ukraine
Well, I think Ukraine's also Orthodox.
Ukraine is also orthodox, but
Orthodox.
they're here's the thing, they there's a split between, so they're Constantinople Orthodox,
Right.
which is Istanbul. They're not Moscow Orthodox anymore, and that was a big deal, believe it or not. Yeah, and so again, Russian Empire. I will say that's an interesting talk in terms of using the word civil war to describe the Clone Wars versus say the rebellion. That's the big difference, right? We say the Galactic Civil War. It wasn't. It was a revolution to restore the Republic.
Mhm.
It was because they were the alliance to restore the Republic. Whereas, yeah, I mean, we think about civil war. I guess maybe this is the theory. There's two kinds of civil war. There's a separatist civil war, and then there's a regime change civil war, like I mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah,
Um,
I will say
you know
this
what I mean?
just to kind of I will say this, and we can then move on
Mhm.
because this is also a thing. Revolution and civil wars are not that different in a sense of that
Mhm.
a lot of revolution can happen during a civil war, or
Yeah.
or a revolution can precede a civil war. So you have the
Mhm.
Russian Revolution, then you get a civil war. You have the Chinese Civil War, you get the Chinese Revolution that leads
Yeah.
to the PRC. So
Yeah.
they're more intertwined than I think than I think people think they are. But I can
Mhm.
definitely see your point there.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the separatists.
Mhm.
Here's something I want to see more of. I want to see more of the pervasion of the separatists, the endurance of separatism in the rebellion, in the alliance to restore the Republic, in the the
If
Rebel
there is one,
Alliance.
I mean, I would argue though. I don't think
Or
there
what
is though.
happened?
I
Well,
think
that's the thing.
I
What
think they're a
happened?
separate group. I think
Yeah,
probably Mon's like, no, we don't want you guys. We want just the regime. We just want the Republic back. You can form your own rebellion,
true.
and they probably
And then
kind of did.
especially Saw Gerrera, um,
And you got Saw.
would not have that. The one thing I want to say, last thing I want to say about the separatists
Okay.
is what's interesting. The Nile, they're just a bunch of pirates. They have their parties on the Electric Gaze. Yeah, that was called on the Gaze. We'll get to the First Order. They have the Finalizer and the Silencer, and then Snoke's super whatever
Mega Star Destroyer.
mega thing, like whatever it's
Supremacy is
called.
actually
The
called.
Supremacy, that's what it's called. Basically, floating planet. The Separatists are the only group here that actually form a parliament. Gira tried to, but form a parliament, have a civilian authority. Because Grievous was the general of the droid army. He was under Dooku, who was, whatever
I think head of state is what they call it.
whatever head of state. But yeah, it was, but that there was almost the civilian control of this military. as opposed to, of course, the Nile and the First Order.
And then you
So
got the Separatist Council, which is all the banking clan.
yeah, the Separatist Council, which is that's true too. But my point being, they actually had these civilian institutions and tried to raise them, tried to actually create something legitimate. And which maybe, I mean, the parallel there, I mean, the Confederate Congress, right?
Presidency, we had
and presidency, right? They modeled their constitution on the U.S. Constitution. So not to say that what they were trying to do was legitimate in terms of, by legitimacy, I mean in terms of the way we mean it in political science, right? We mean popular legitimacy.
Institution building is what.
Institution building. I mean, that's the perennial debate. Was it about slavery? Was it about economics? Potato, right?
I mean you mean that's the thing. Marcion didn't want to make institutions. He would just like, I mean, he had these fake, like he gave like, you're my minister of thing, but it's like, didn't mean anything. Where it's like, weirdly, Dooku at least tried to, for probably appearances. Obviously, a lot of those institutions are probably paper tiger, where at the end of the day, the real power is with, Dooku and Grievous and the council and Sidious. But, he at least tried to like form appearances of, we are a legitimate government. We have a parliament. It's like, even I remember Nina Montefiore, it's like, Dooku doesn't rule the separatists. He's just the president of the Senate or something like that. Like, but obviously we know the truth, but at least he had an appearance of something.
Yeah, definitely for placating. Right, which again, Markian placating Gura, placating Vice. Although Vice had more of a General Vice had more of a point. I mean, Lorna D as well. There's more phase 3 kind of things change, and then Baron Bulin doing his thing. But I mean, that's the odd thing is. So maybe this is kind of my point is, contrasting the Nile with the separatists. I mean, the separatist parliament really did stuff, whereas Gira wasn't able to do anything. She was just a kind of deflection, a distraction. At the end of the day, you're right. Like, it was just to placate and spread the myth of visionary Dooku. But
right. Well, Grievous was doing the real work, being evil.
Whereas Quebec has a national assembly. It's constitutionally equivalent to the Ontario Legislative Assembly, to the Prince Edward Island Legislative Assembly, but it's called the National Assembly, and it's in the national capital, and they do have some different constitutional language provisions. So, there's that.
So I want to get actually to what I think is the most interesting of these separatist groups, and that is the First Order. Yeah. So probably asking yourself, why do you think that, Joel? Well, here's the thing. There is a period between the Bloodline book and Force Awakens that's not explored that much. A little bit in the Poe comic, but that is very interesting, and I'll get into why. So I think that, and this is something that, of course, the movies don't get into, and the screen stuff hasn't really gotten into either, and the books and comics don't get into either, because we do mostly after Starkiller Base. I think there are 2 First Orders. You have the First Order of the Unknown Regions, which are just the military junta of Snoke and Hux and Sloane and those cats, boldly going where no empire has gone before. I like to say Sloane is evil Captain Janeway. Then in Bloodline, you have what I call the public First Order. This is the First Order that's for show. This is the centrist worlds that secede from the Republic, which, funny enough, I've actually looked in maps and stuff. There are not that many, and Coruscant's not one of them. Coruscant stays with the Republic. I have a map of like the public First Order. I could show later. And that's obviously the centrist worlds that go, they decide, what, we miss the old days of the Empire. We're going to become a pro-Empire faction called the First Order, and they all form together. But obviously, we are not going. Of course, we don't have Star Destroyers. We don't have those. We our troops look like stormtroopers, but that's for show. That's our cultural roots. Um, and so you have, and obviously Leia's like, oh, you're full of BS. I'm gonna form this resistance insurgency and gonna kind of basically just go in there and take it out myself. But the New Republic's like, oh, okay, I don't see Star Destroyers. We don't want to start a war. We're cool. So you have the Public First Order, which are the centrist worlds in the known galaxy that kind of are like for show. They're like, hey, join us. Get some security. And then obviously you have the actual First Order, which is Star Killers, Snoke, all them, the supremacy, the actual military that's gonna, blow up the capital and seize all these important states. So I would love to get more explanation of like that in between period before Starkiller. Like, what did the galaxy think the First Order actually was? Because we know that we have the centrist worlds, they split off, they formed the First Order, or at least the public face of the First Order, because the First Order was already a thing by that point, at least in terms of its military. Is Snoke like an official public figure who like gives speeches? Is he like Count Dooku? Do they have a parliament? Is there like the First Order parliament that's just for like Dooku that's just for show? It's like they're just these weirdos, and it's like no, actually the First Order is like a real scary thing, but no one believes it. Is there like a council in charge? And I would love to flesh out that timeline of like what did the centrist worlds create in terms of calling itself the First Order, before obviously then they decided to, to blow up the Republic and, just do the old-fashioned Empire thing that we all know and love. So that I think is a fascinating thing. And what's interesting about it is, quite frankly, I think the First Order, if it actually wanted to like legit succeed, if I were the villain in charge and if I was in charge of the galaxy, I would have just honestly kept at that group because I think the First Order was probably it was never big in the first place. So like, yeah, just stay in your little corner. You can't control the whole galaxy. It's never going to work for you. And this actually gets into something in a lot of right-wing think spaces these days. And this is something I could possibly think will see in the post-Trump right-wing environment when that happens, because it will, where you notice that the people from like, these are the very radical elements of the coalition, like the radical.
Yeah.
Scary thoughts, folks. Trump's actually more moderate about a lot of these things than even his followers. If you can believe that. It's true, though. I won't name the name because I don't want to give them any breathing room. But
do they start with a Q?
No, it's actually more like a friend.
Okay. Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Where they kind of are realizing that just becoming president is not going to actually work out the way they think anyway.
Right.
And a lot of them are like, you know what? Okay, maybe we can't rule the whole country. Maybe we just need to create white enclaves, right? Just let's balkanize the U.S. We'll make our own little whiteistan. And that's going to lead eventually to like, Blackistan and Latinostan, Iristan. And, the idea is now becoming, you know what? Maybe we just can't rule the whole galaxy / country. Maybe we just got to carve up a little space and call it a day. Like, that's the best we can do. And I think in a weird sense, they didn't go this way. And obviously the First Order wasn't planning on it. But, like, they could have just said, you know what? First Order is just human stand. It's a little enclave for all humans. We'll just we'll make ourselves a little little area, and it's like we'll just stay here. We'll carve up the galaxy instead of trying to conquer it, because let's face it, we can't. We just couldn't. It's like it's gonna take resources and stuff. It's like, you know what? Human stand. There we go. We're good. Call it a day.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the First Order didn't do that. They never were going to do that. But, if I were the evil dictator in charge, that's what I would have done. It's like, you know what? I'm sticking to my little corner. And if anyone that wants to join me, that's cool. But human stand, where the majority is humans. Yeah, the few minorities there aren't going to be good. But you know what? At least we're not trying to conquer Kashyyyk again. So that's why I think I would love a more fleshed out era between Bloodline and Force Awakens to like really know what that First Order centrist group was like, that acted like little separatists, but for humans and pro-imperial sympathizers. 'Cause I think it's very
Yeah.
fascinating.
Oddly enough, they're the centrists, which they wanted a more centralized government on Chandrila or Hosnian Prime or wherever.
We thought in Prime at the time, but yeah.
Yeah, Hosnian Prime.
Although, weirdly enough, Coruscant did not join them, and only a few worlds did.
Yeah.
Not all the centrists actually joined the First Order. I think that's a bit of a misconception.
No, yeah. I mean, Ransom, I mean, for him, the Empire's an aesthetic, right? He's Vader's, he has childhood memories of Vader threatening his father, but then the Empire's just an aesthetic, which Leia is still skeptical of and still wary of, and he realizes, oh no, what am I doing here? Yeah, well, it's what I was getting at with the whole clarifying the rise of the First Order. There's this generational gap, and ultimately the plan, again, the final order is Exegol, but there, yeah, like you said, so there's one branch of the First Order that is a separatist movement. There's another branch that is a galactic conquest movement, right? Their two are very different. The thing is that the separatist movement is the means for the galactic conquest movement to develop its time and resources, right? For Kuat or whoever or Sinar to go off and help them. That's why they do have Star Destroyers and they do have stormtroopers and all that. Ray says within weeks the First Order will control all the major star systems. Right? They do end up trying to capture Kashyyyk. I don't know if they do or not.
They don't actually capture Coruscant. In Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, there's actually a little story that says they tried to take Coruscant and they don't. So it's like, that's another story I want to know about. Like, why couldn't the First Order take Coruscant? That's fascinating.
Yeah. Maybe a film by Colin Trevorrow. No, I'm just kidding. But it's fast. That's the thing is, you have Brendel and you have Ray Sloan and you have all these folks going off on the Eclipse to just do their own thing in the unknown regions. While we have Thrawn, we have all these folks. Maybe after. Here's the thing. Maybe it's even after. It's after Thrawn. Where this really happens, but like where you're getting at.
My head
well, what I'm saying is bringing together what you were saying about the Mandoverse and the end of the Mandoverse here is the failure to actually resurrect the Empire or Thrawn and the Shadow Council. That really is the final push outward. And then, who knows what happens there, but, I can see the separatist movement, it being a separatist movement, say, let's go do our thing. But then you have Armitage and Phasma and them saying, no, we want to go back and take over. and Kylo Ren. I mean, that's the thing. Snoke is kind of a separatist, part of the separatist faction.
No, I think he's part of the Conquest faction because
he's part of the Conquest. Okay, maybe he takes over as part of the Conquest faction. But my point is, it's telling that he gets killed during The Last Jedi, which is the success of the Conquest faction overall, and Kylo Ren is the supreme leader of the galaxy, not just of the First Order, because the First Order controls the galaxy at that point. I know it's murky, but that is a fascinating story. I agree, and it gets at the kind of things we've been talking about, because there is a point of the First Order that isn't a separatist movement. It is, from a certain point of view, it's a rebellion to resurrect the past regime, like the Rebel Alliance, but the dark side of it. And so,
like the rebels if they controlled planets.
Well, it's like the rebels if they were evil.
That too. Well, that's actually, we can kind of make this our last point because you mentioned the resistance, and I think I'll just add the rebellion in here. The rebellion.
Although I'll clarify what I mean by the resistance, but go ahead. Or why? But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Because I sent you some videos from our good friend Corey Datapad, fellow Canadian, by the way. We did a video on Quebec and Star Wars. of why the rebellion never made its own version of the Senate.
Mhm.
And it's because they did not want to be seen as a separatist movement.
Right.
The
Exactly.
rebellion was very, very, and this is more legends stuff.
Mhm.
But I'm sure it applies to canon, quite frankly. Of
Yeah.
Mon, Bale, Garm, you know, were very, very cautious of not wanting to be a separatist. That's why they didn't really conquer planets, no, or
Mhm.
liberate planets
Mhm.
wholesale, with some exceptions. That's why they didn't have a senate. That's why kind of the only government they had was just Mon Mothma's chancellor and some
Mhm.
ministers, but that was just high command. If they really didn't want to be seen as like these are two governments fighting, like no,
Mhm.
we are the real republic, and we're just gonna put ourselves
Mhm.
back in charge. We do
Yeah.
not want to be a separatist movement. We're not a separatist movement. We
Mhm.
are an insurgency that is just going to restore the republic and put the Senate back on Coruscant or
Yeah.
Tangela, and then hopefully move to Coruscant, and then we can figure out the rotating capital thing later. But
Mhm.
we are not a separatist movement. That's very
They're
like On and
no,
Bale are very clear. We are not a separatist movement.
they're
We
the
don't want
alliance to restore the republic.
exactly, and they took very hard PR lines
Mhm.
as to not do that. Like they saw Mon and Bale saw the Imperial Senate before it got dissolved as the Senate. That is our legislature.
Mhm.
That is our, and you know, they could have restored the call the Senate back when Palpatine dissolved it, but they
Mhm.
decided not to. But the point is, as far as they're concerned, there's only one Senate. It's the Senate,
Mhm.
not two Senates, not three Senates, just the Senate. The Imperial Senate is the Senate.
Yeah.
That's
They considered it in continuity with, at least
it's
Mon was elected to it.
yeah,
Bale
exactly.
wasn't, but he was appointed to it, to the Senate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, same building.
exactly.
Like they say, it's the same institution,
Exactly.
right?
So,
Um,
if they did call it back after, which is why they probably could have called it back after Palpatine dissolved it. It's like, no, this is the same Senate.
mhm,
We're calling it back because that guy illegally dissolved it.
yeah. So, yeah, which is, I mean, at what point does that become a legal fiction or not? But yeah, it's true, and they didn't want to. So the reason I have resistance in there is
Ow.
actually that's interesting. Again, another generational thing. The reason I think the resistance is a bit of a separatist movement, a little bit, maybe a temporary separatist movement like the First Order, oddly enough, uh, is because the successor to the Alliance to Restore the Republic, the Restored Republic, uh, doesn't, like you mentioned, doesn't want to take the First Order threat seriously, isn't able to, for various reasons that are complicated, maybe legitimate, or especially the whole we don't want to raise a standing army and have a standing fleet,
Well,
the
they do have
Grand
a
Army of the
fleet.
Republic.
They actually do have an army and a fleet.
They have a little bit of one, but like we don't want a Grand Army of the Republic. Look what happened last time. And so Leia says, well, I can't really worry about that. Another thing that happened last time is that we took up arms and used this Phoenix sigil. And
Yes.
and I'll say, that of course the New Republic also uses, but they have to separate. They have to go out and make bases and get old X-wings out of mothballs and fire them up to do what they can to face the threat because the Republic won't. And so, yeah, there's a tacit acceptance of it, but officially, no, we're not. Kind of official disavowal of the resistance. Of course, Armitage. It's like, forget that. We're going to go blow up Bosnian Prime. But also to say, I mean, the point structurally, I should say, narratively, is to say the of the destruction of Bosnian Prime is to say that the resistance is right to step up and take action. Right, they're the heroes of our story. And Rey ultimately, of course, is the hero of the story. So is Poe. So are Poe and Finn. So that's kind of what I mean by separatist movement. Yeah, I mean there are precedents in microcosm, like even Rogue One is kind of as in like Jin and Cassian taking the U-wing to Scarif. I mean that's a bit of a microcosm of separatism in order to combat a threat. Of course, the Rebel Alliance does follow along with that, but yeah, it's there's temporary separatism, and then there's permanent separatism, and it's an interesting relate to them. Of course, I'm still curious. This is again the closing thing we always end off with is what's next. What does the galaxy look like? Is it kind of like what you're talking about with a move towards greater federalism again? Maybe, but yeah.
We'll find out hopefully maybe in 2027. With Star Force Starfire by Sean Levy. That's kind of all I got. I had this quote for Count Dooku, but I was like, I didn't get to use it, and I didn't have a reason to. So, oh well. I would like to keep it here just in case. Sure. Yeah, I think we've covered all the separatism that we can. It's a complicated question. I think not all separatist movements are equal. You got to look at the context of what's going on, of course. I think what goes on in Canada is very different what's going on in, say, Turkey right now, for sure. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, give us your thoughts on separatism. Guys like it? Guys hate it? Comment below and let us know.
It's complicated. I mean, what's going on in Alberta is unfortunately, sadly, going to be similar and probably even more brutal when there's the blue wave next midterms, and then what happens next presidency. But see what happens then. What a world we live in, Joel. But on that note, I agree. It's a good time to wrap things up. We live another day. We go on another day. We're communicating across an international border here, having a conversation. So there's integration for you. Good place to wrap things up. Thanks everyone for joining us. Of course, commenting in from literally the other side of the planet, down in Aotearoa, etc., and wherever everyone else joining in from. Thanks for the conversation tonight. Comment below again what you think. Boxes aren't going anywhere. What you thought about the Mandalorian Grogu trailer. What you thought about, if you read Acolyte Wayseeker. What do you think about Sith and their backstories and their resumes? Let us know. Please do give this video a like and a share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. All right, Joel, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID20234 on Blue Sky, JID20234 on Blue Sky, and of course the Star Wars Underworld Discord, game nights, movie nights, and more.
Fun times. You can find my personal Instagram, MANEUG1138. That's also Threads in Blue Sky, but check my Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, NEUG485. But my reading list is on Instagram. Everything's on Instagram, so check that out. Also, Ion Canon, Blue Sky, the tractor beam Blue Sky. Gotta get it. There's some news. We're gonna talk about some news also in next on Wednesday. So gotta be sure to check that out. And of course, talking about episode Star Wars number 10 in the series review of Alex Agura's run. So check that out. That is this Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And then we're gonna be right back at you, Joel. Coming right back. We're talking about another part of the galaxy called the underworld. The actual underworld.
Star Wars underworld. Oh,
the Star Wars. Yes.
Not the podcast, the actual underworld.
Yeah, the actual underworld. We're going to talk about the podcast. That'd be kind of silly. I know. We're going to talk about the underworld. We're coming up on our 200th episode. We're thinking about what we might do for special there. Definitely, it's been what, 4 years into our 5th year?
I think so.
It's been one Winter Olympics, going to come up to 2 World Cups, and ultimately 2 presidential elections
And a
Hopefully.
partridge in a pear tree.
And a partridge in a pear tree. All right. Anyways, so yes, we're talking about the underworld next week. Joel, until then, let's build this thing at home.